Second stock round, and the first player had the priority, calculated things out, and saw that if he sold his 30% holdings of Marley, Scrooge, and Cratchit, he had enough money to start a company. So he started one at 60 bucks, the CD Brothers Company. Sorry. And this will give him a chance to use his investors, which is what he really needs a company for more than anything else. He also sees it as a good opportunity to start a company because this one's loaded up with 2 trains and he can start buying these more valuable 3 trains. Now, the second player had enough cash to buy another 10% share. Remember, he had a 10% share here. Unlike most XX games, you can kind of exchange shares like change. There's only a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40, and that's it. So if you need to make change for the better share, you can. And he's kind of happy this worked out this way. All right. And he ended up with the priority because he bought that extra 10% share to float the company. And we'll start in the operating round. This is another one that has 6 tokens. And I'll go over quickly what happened after it happens. So he ran for 220 bucks and paid that out at 22 a share. That gave him 132 bucks cash in pocket. He's trying to get up enough money to start yet another corporation. So let's go to the CD Brothers Corporation's actions, because he's got some interesting abilities here. First of all, he played 2 of his tokens, grabbing his investors. Now he's got 2 companies he can hold in 2 tokens. Now here's the choice. I could pay 100 bucks for something that produces 50 a turn, or 200 bucks for something that produces 50 a turn but lasts long. Now, later 3 trains still cost 200 bucks but produce more. Because of my 20% discount in buying railroads, I'm just going to pay 160 and grab the cheaper trains. Okay, I'll move that up because he paid. That seems wrong. He was at 60 now. He should be at 70. Okay. So, Marley, Scrooge, and Cratchit paid out. It's big 22 a share again. Pile of money here. He's hoping to start another company. I don't know if he has enough cash, but let's go over to the CD Brothers. Moved all the tokens down to hold rails that are possible, and kept 2 to purchase. It's pretty standard. Bought another cheap one, and the first 3 train. So, although he only paid out at 11 a share, because he could only pay with the the cards that he had showing. Ooh, make that 12 a share. Uh-oh. I forgot that's plus 10 for each railroad in the trust, not plus 10 period. Okay, so, and there are 4 wait, I'm totally confused now. Oh no, there were only 2 at the time. Okay, so having 4 railroads though is a real bonus for him. Now, that's the end of this stock round. Oh, I screwed up. One of these 2 trains should have been discarded earlier. So he's got to pay 80 bucks more to get a 3 train. I forgot about that. Okay. At the end of each turn, at the end of each pair of operating rounds, and we just ended a pair, you discard a card off the top of the train companies. Sort of force things to happen. Because people could get to a position where they don't want to sell trains. So, how does it all end and what's worth what and stuff like that? Well, kind of like the 1829 version, and some of the others have had many of the others have had this. The game ends when you hit the top stock value, and boom. What happens? Well, you count up the value of your stock, you count up the value of your cash, stuff in your corporation doesn't count. Standard XX type ideas here. It's kind of an interesting game, feel-wise. It gets rid of the having to deal with the track lays and actually running your trains, etc. The mechanism is much easier. These feel kind of like trains. But the flavor's not there, you know. I mean, we'll talk about this later in the review, but whenever that happens. But yeah, I think it's not as bad as I feared, but it certainly isn't anything terribly exciting. So a quick stock round. The second player had priority, ended up buying a 30% share in his own company that ran 270 bucks. The first player increased his own holdings by 10% with the trade-in on the shares. Now, this is actually where this thing came in handy, because the second player could have bought a 20 or 30% share in the CD Brothers company, but couldn't buy a 10% share, which he kind of wanted to have. He thinks it's going to make more money. But having to buy more than 10% of the company meant that this sucker would be a threat. He could end up with a pillaged company. Now, that's not too likely to happen, given that, or corporation or whatever, given that there's people on it, etc. You kind of want to dump those things before you make that choice. And he would have to have been sure that there wouldn't be another company started, which he wasn't. That was the big defining issue, and he wanted to hold priority. So with each of them holding just one company or one corporation, he feels fairly comfortable being this heavily invested, and will probably be able to pay out twice again. As far as I know, I might look this up, but I don't think it's the case. It's hard to navigate these rules. They're so compressed. There would be no benefit to getting all 100% out, which is one of the reasons investing in someone else isn't a bad idea. So for the operating round on the Marley and Scrooge, he pulled one of his tokens down to put over here. It's going to give a +10 bonus to operating rounds. And he pays out, and that's a total of $230, $23 a share. With 90% in his hands, he pulls 207 bucks, which goes into his pocket. He's going to very easily be able to start another company with this kind of income flow, and therefore be able to transfer railway companies between his corporations. Okay, so I throw away a railroad because the two operating rounds have ended. Both players did the same thing, except they didn't add an extra token. They each added one at the first operating round, but not a second one. The reason why not a second one is, here I can hold 4 trains, and I can still move something onto my company, or onto my corporation. Not having that ability to move, or reducing the number of train companies that I can hold, one or the other in the long term, would be the case if I drop down to four spaces. Since these trains aren't permanent, or companies aren't permanent, or whatever you want to call them, I can't help but think of them as trains because they serve the same purpose as an XX rally. Since they're not permanent, the corporation really wants to hold the ability to move onto them. So while this guy made 207 again, this guy was only making 31 a share, which works out to 186 for him for each operating round. Now we jump to the stock round again. And at the end of the stock round, we see 2 new companies or corporations floated. The Alvin V. A. Rice International. I don't know, Avarice. Yes. And that was started at 80, basically throwing all of his money into the certificates to get the 50%. You might not want to do that. You might want to buy these, but there's no bonus to buying shares from started corporations. Particularly, they're not at a par value or anything like that. They're at the stock value as current. And this guy made Desmond Pickleball. I don't know. Anyway, and he started that down at 70, which was the best he could do. Priority stays over here. They both bought the same amount of certificates. There's a certificate limit of 9. So he's at 5. He's at 4. I don't think investors count. And that is one of the reasons that I've always believed in starting companies in XX games is, hey, you know, normally you get a 20% share, which gives you basically a double share for starting a company. Well, here, starting one gives you the 40% certificate, which is better than the 30%, which is better. So it's kind of an iffy thing. You want to have the bigger certificate values, there's no question, because you have a limit to how much of your capital you can invest. It's the number of, you know, percentage points you can hold. Anyway, that's one reason for starting companies. Another reason is control. The more corporations you hold in any XX game, the more you control the flow and pace of the game, and the more you can determine how much the trains come out. So both players want that degree of control. Of course, there's a risk to having corporations in an XX game. If you play a 2-player XX, though, usually you can absolutely dominate the game if you can get the vast majority of the corporations out. So I'm suspecting that may be similar here, because again, it's a matter of how quickly you can get these trains out. Alright, and we're up to D's, which means we can bring a 4 train out, which will crush all those 2s. And that's something that this guy in particular may want to do, because he's got a load of 2s on his corporation and not much money. So he may want to do a swallow over here in order to prevent that danger. Alright, well, let's go on to the operating round. But you know what? I'm going to wrap this one up and send it up to you. I know there's not a lot to see in this game. That's one of the things. You're basically getting my speaking more than anything else, but it's the only way I have of showing it to you, really. Alright, I'm going to send this one up, and we're on an operating round. Oh, you'll notice one other thing before I head. These guys only have 5 tokens to play with on their cards, as does the blue player, right? Or does he only have 4? No, he's got 5. Okay. That's 1 token less than the 2 original corporations. That gives them a little less ability and flexibility. That's why you definitely want to grab one of these 2 first, because they're a little more powerful at the beginning of the game. And there doesn't seem to be any other variance between the corporations, except they go in the order listed. There might be some reason you want to always go last. I can't really think of what that might be, though. Okay.